foundation of the modern rock guitar tone is based on three main pillars. The iconic Fender amps, known for their pristine cleans, the legendary Vox amps, known for their chimey and crunchy sounds, and finally, the mighty Marshalls, delivering that roar and distortion that made countless rock anthems. So what would be really cool is if we could have those pillars in a teeny weeny box. Well, I guess these guys managed to do it. This is the DSM Humboldt Simplifier MkII. Before we start looking at the pedal, it's just worth mentioning a couple of points. One, this is the MkII because many of you may know that there's an original version of this, which is slightly simplified, and essentially there's a few tweaks to it, but it just has the cleanish sounds of all three of these amps. And so the biggest difference with this one is that you have the full spectrum of those amp sounds, from clean to distortion on all three, the Vox, Marshall, and Fender. The MkII essentially is just taking what was really good about the Mark I and making it even better. The second thing to mention is that the simplifier pedals are all analog. Now you may be wondering, who cares, or what's the big deal with it being all analog? Although we could do a whole 5-hour video on the differences between the two. In a nutshell, and if you're not familiar with people saying these random things, all it means is that the guitar signal is being processed using physical items such as capacitors, transistors, and resistors. Now, another way of thinking about it, if you like painting, would be simply using an oil paint. You brush that and it continuously flows through your movements. Digital would be like painting with tiny, tiny, tiny pixels and putting them there. It may achieve wonderful, incredible results, but the whole process is different. And some say that analog or painting with those oil colors creates a more organic, a more subtle tone, and most importantly, a tone that reacts in a different way to your guitar. So your volume and your tone of your guitar. Often digital products, when you turn that volume down, don't quite know what the hell's going on. Analog does that a lot better. There is no doubt about that. So that's the end of today's lesson. Let's move on to the actual pedal. As always in my videos, let's start off with the construction and the features. The pedal as a whole is really sturdy. Nice metal chassis. It's built like a tank, feels good. Really also quite lightweight as well, which is always nice. Sometimes these can be really heavy, but no, really lightweight. Everything feels very responsive. Everything has a nice grip to it as well. So made for the live player. And overall, it just feels like a quality product, which by the way, is handmade. In terms of connections, the simplifier is surprisingly complete. I mean, seriously, how the hell did they manage to fit all this in this box is beyond me. Starting with it, you've got your standard 1/4-inch guitar inputs and outputs. Output is stereo, but then you also have an effects loop. You also have an inbuilt reverb. And finally, you also get a stereo XLR outs for connecting to that mixing board. And then just to make our life easier, you have a headphone input with a level for that. Very handy. And then you also have an aux in case you want to play whatever backing track or whatever music at the back. This is all powered with the standard 9-volt wall plug. So very cool. You don't need to get any specific voltage wall plug. Just your normal Boss wall plug will do. So as I said, incredibly complete. But I think the real magic here lies with the features. At first glance, it may be slightly overwhelming, right? You got a lot of switches, you got a lot of knobs. Wow, I don't even know where to start. But actually, if you look at it, it is so simple. Even an idiot like myself can get it. There's no reading of manuals. There isn't even a manual. You don't need that because it is so straightforward. Incredible design. I mean, top notch for design here. Let's start with the amp selection. You've got these two little switches here. What you'll read is pointing up is an AC Brit, so a Vox style amp. USA is in the middle, your standard Fender, and MS Brit Marshall at the bottom. On the left of that switch, you have the power type. So you have the corresponding power amp section of all these amps. Or if you wanted to, why not? Mix and match. You've got the ability to do that. At the top of that, you have both for the preamp and for the power amp, the two drives and gains, they call them. So the preamp, it goes from clean to warm to distortion and to high. The power amp section goes from linear to warm to compression to distortion. And these two are possibly amongst the most important two dials on this pedal because working them together is magical. At the bottom, you have a tone stack, standard 3-band EQ, treble, mid, and bass. And if you look at here, you'll see it when I'm playing, you have a little diode that lights up and it's a power amp clipping. Now that clipping is not a bad clipping like you would get in your audio interface. It's not that your sound is going to be horrible and you should turn it down. What that clipping tells you is that you're actually pushing your power amp, which is often the most forgotten thing. Great guitar tones, the legendary ones, Van Halen, Angus Young, all those guys. It doesn't come from the preamp. A lot of it comes from the power amp. They are pushing that power amp to max. And that's often something that, because we now play in smaller environments, smaller venues, small rooms at home, we can't do because it would be way too loud. But this allows you to do it. Then in the middle, you have a master volume for the whole pedal section. And that has a volume, presence, and resonance. Those two, again, give you all the nice tools that you can shape the sound to add a little more bass, add a little more presence, etc. Then moving to this side, you have the stereo cabinet sim. Again, remember, this is stereo, so it's really fantastic to be able to have two cabs at any time on your amps. The first thing here is you have matching cabinet types. You have a combo, which would go with the Vox style. You have a twin, which would obviously go with the Fender, and then you have a stack, which would go with the Marshall. And the same thing here. So you have one for right and one for left. You can mix and match those. So you can do whatever you want. But in addition to that, you now have also the speaker type, and you have a choice of 3 for each. So you can go black, which is Fender, blue, which is the Vox, and green, which is obviously a Celestion green, which goes with the Marshall. You can choose any of those, mix and match them, play around, and get different sounds in there. So very, very cool. Final section in terms of the features is the reverb. You have a reverb dial here where you can dial in the amount of reverb you want on any of these amps. I think all we've got to do now is plug in and play. Just a quick disclaimer before we do that, you will notice that there's no little sponsored post section at the top, and that's because this hasn't been sponsored by DSM. I bought this unit myself because I really wanted to give it a try and I wanted to see how much better it got in Mark II. So let's go. As you can see, I'm all plugged in. I've got my usual jet guitar because it's nice and versatile. And what we're doing is we're running the Simplifier Mark II straight into my audio interface and then recording everything with Reaper. We've got no post effects, nothing like that. We are using the inbuilt cabs with the Simplifier because they sound fantastic. So let's just play around and let's see what these amps sound like. I think it's only fair if we start with the cleanish one, which is the USA, which obviously is a Fender. We can say that without getting sued, right? So let's start with putting the cab sim to the black. Both of them are in the black, and we'll go to twin cabs, and then we can mess around with that. We've got more or less everything in the middle. Let's start like this and see what it sounds like. So really nice and clean. Let's try to put that power amp up a little bit. Let's go pre-gain a little higher. Just quick thing to note here. Did you see how changing the pickups from the humbucker to the single coil and lowering that volume just a little bit just made a massive difference to how it sounds? Let's max the preamp gain and see what happens. That's pretty cool. Let's also max the power drive and you will see, look at the clip, that's pretty cool. Let's now look at the resonance and presence. So very reactive. The beauty of this is that you can also change cab type and speaker type. So let's do that. Let's go to greenback. On the right hand side, we've got the stack with the greenbacks, and on the left, we just have the normal twin with the black, and already it makes a massive difference to your tone. Now let's go combo and blue backs. Very cool. Let's do a bit of a voxy thing. So let's go to blue backs and we're going to AC Brit on both the power and the drive. Wow, that's pretty cool. That sounds great. Okay, let's now move on to the roaring Marshall. Let's do it and check it out. So let's go power type as well. Let's go start with the driven. Cab type, we're going green and stack on both of them. Obviously with the Marshall, we're going to put a little bit of preamp gain up, and let's see if we can make it sound. Okay, beautiful people. I hope you enjoyed those sound samples, and also I hope you enjoyed that intro jam. Just remember, there is no post effects, no messing around with EQs and stuff. Everything comes from this little baby. Now I think you know what time it is. It's time for the pros and cons. Start off with the pros because this has a lot of pros. The first thing has to be its size, guys. It is so teeny. It's incredible. When I opened the box, I actually thought, what the hell? How can it be this small? I'm still amazed how they managed to cram all that stuff into this. That's my first pro. My second pro has to be just the tones, the analog tones. And look, I don't want to start a massive debate, analog versus digital. There's plenty of digital products that recreate these 3 amps properly. But you know what? This will sound, if not the same, way better than them. I've yet to hear a more accurate version of these amps. It just reacts differently. The components used in it, the fact that everything is so smooth and organic. You just feel when you're playing that you roll down the tone, you roll down the volume, and you get the same feel as a valve amp does. It reacts in the same way because essentially, except for the valves, it's more or less there. The cab sims are incredible, really, really good. I didn't really find that I needed to disable the cabs and go through a separate IR loader or a cab sim like Celestion Speaker Mix Pro because they just sounded so good. Overall, really, what you get is that harmonic richness, that kind of alive, organic feel, and finally, the response, the dynamic response. My third pro is a joint one, and it goes to the reverb, because the reverb sounds really good on this. And second of all, the fact that it has an effects loop. These kind of pedals are magic with an effects loop. The whole point of this is that you're supposed to play your other analog pedals in front, in the effects loop, delay pedals, etc. So it works incredibly well. And now let's move on to the cons. What? You've got cons? Maybe I do. In all fairness, they're not really cons. They're more like observations, and I think you guys need to be aware of it. As we said in the pros, the only effects, and it's great, is the reverb. So you may find that slightly limiting for this price range. Just something to keep in mind. You will have to pair this with delays, modulations, etc. It's not a all-in-one pedal. My second con, or observation, if you want to call it so, is also the fact that if you are someone that likes to rock out and play more extreme types of music, this won't do it. You'll need to, again, put an additional drive pedal or an overdrive or a distortion pedal in front of this. And now, as always, before I give you my final thoughts, just in case you guys care, let's talk about who this is for, because I think this is super relevant for this amp. Look, this pedal is at a price point around $300, I think, normally 300 so pounds, where you may think it's not giving you a lot for your money. But you just need to remember that it is handmade in Chile, all premium components inside. It's not mass produced in some factory. It's a premium product. So having said that, if the price is not a deal breaker for you, then this is applicable to all levels of guitarists, because if you are a bedroom guitarist and you want those sounds and you're happy with those sounds and you're just starting off, just plug it in, put your earphones on, and you've got silent practice with some amazing tones. I would have killed for these tones 20 years ago. It really is amazing in terms of sound quality. The headphones work perfectly. You can balance it out with the level as well. Really, really good. On the other side, if you are gigging with your buddies or you're going to rehearsals, just bring this with you. Light, you can put it in your pocket, so easy, and you can plug it into a speaker, you can plug it into a guitar amp, and you know you're going to get consistently good sounds out of this. If you are someone that works in a studio, recording guitarist, can you just imagine having these 3 vintage amps in a studio, how much that would cost you, or going for a session? It's just not doable, right? You've got them here. As a session guitarist, this will cover most of your needs, and it's quick. Let me say this clearly. If you've ever done a session or you're going in, you need to lay down your tracks quickly. You do not want to menu dive. You do not want to see, oh, can I tweak this amp or get this IR going? You need to have it in a couple seconds, and this will do it. If you're wasting time, that's money for whoever's renting the studio. You've got no excuses with this. You just have to play. Let's now talk about my final thoughts. I can't say this will be for all of you, because we all have different needs, we all have different tastes. It may be too limiting for some, but personally, I think these has the 3 pillars of great guitar tone that I think is wide enough to cover shitloads of scenarios. And it does it so well. You get that real analog warmth. It is so refreshing not to have to connect an app to it. It is so refreshing not to have to menu dive. It's a beautiful sounding pedal that is just very inspiring to play. So in conclusion, if this is what you need, if you have a nice pedal board, I don't see why you wouldn't get this. Brilliant, brilliant pedal. Highly recommended. So guys, as always, let me know what you think. Have you guys played this? Have you played the first Simplifier? Have you played the bigger Simplifier? Be interested to know what you guys think, and especially if you think there's enough range in it in terms of heavier sounds. For me, there is, but everyone's different, right? So thank you so much for watching. I will continue playing this wonderful amp, and till next time, I've got some really cool things. Remember to like, subscribe, do all that business so the algorithm is happy with me. Finally, just remember, be nice, enjoy yourself, have a great time. It's a beautiful world, and play loads of guitar. See you later, guys.